Well, I've had so many emails lately from listeners who are asking the question, Brando, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through the next 4 years? What do we do next? And I do want to say, I want to let everyone know that I am trying my damnedest to read all of your emails. I've been absolutely swamped with them. And I want you to know that I do take time out of my day to read them each day, and I'm trying to catch up. I'm hearing what you're saying. I may not be able to respond to each and every one of them, so I'm going to respond now to all the people who are saying, Brando, what do we do next? And I would say the only answer I have at this point is to just sit back and let MAGA self destruct. Because they've got full reins now. It's in their court. They got everything they ever wanted. And there's already starting to be some infighting within them. They're already starting to get tired of one another. We brought all the receipts. We brought all the evidence. We brought all the proof of the kind of man that Donald Trump truly is. And that didn't move the needle with them. So I don't feel like that's going to work. And I think the only thing we can do now is just sit back when they got what they wanted and let it come apart at the seams. And there's always been one thing that I've brought across anytime I've done videos talking about the religious side of it. I've always said you don't want someone in power who is all about religion because they're going to interpret religion differently. And I always said if you gave complete control to the Southern Baptists, the Catholics would have a problem with it. And the Southern Baptists sure as hell would have a problem with the Catholics having it. So, the Methodists would have a problem with the Pentecostals having it and vice versa. I've always said that. And now we're kind of starting to see that already. And he ain't even took office because Mike Pence has came out strong against the nomination of RFK Jr. for watching over our health. But it's not for the reason why you think. It's for his own interpretation of his own beliefs. And so let's pull this up and let's read this statement from Mike Pence and let's see why that suddenly he has a problem with RFK Jr. Mike Pence says this. The Trump-Pence administration was unapologetically pro-life for 4 years in office. There are hundreds of decisions made at HHS every day that either lead our nation forward or toward a respect for life or away from it. And HHS under our administration always stood for life. I believe the nomination of RFK Jr. to serve as the secretary is an abrupt departure from the pro-life record on our administration and should be deeply concerning to millions of pro-life Americans who have supported the Republican Party and our nominees for decades. For the majority of his career, RFK Jr. has defended abortion on demand during all 9 months of pregnancy, supports overturning Dobbs' decision, and has called for legislation to codify Roe v. Wade. If confirmed, RFK Jr. would be the most pro-abortion Republican appointed Secretary of HHS in modern history. The pro-life movement has always looked to the Republican Party for the standard of life. To affirm an unborn child has fundamental right to life which cannot be infringed. On behalf of tens of millions of pro-life Americans, I respectfully urge the Senate Republicans to reject this nomination and give the American people a leader who will respect the sanctity of life as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Notice he said nothing about RFK Jr. believing in all these crazy conspiracies. He said nothing about his take on vaccines. It's that he's not pro-life enough and he doesn't trust him because he used to be a Democrat and he used to be a lot more pro-life. Now, RFK Jr. has came out and changed his stance on that and said that he would support a national abortion ban. But Mike Pence is already worried that he might not be pro-life enough. He didn't care about all of the. He didn't mention the fact that how unqualified RFK Jr. is. He didn't mention the fact that RFK Jr. is a conspiracy theorist who made even Roseanne Barr roll her eyes at him when he told a ridiculous story about the cub. But here we go with the infighting already starting. And they're going to be saying, hold on a minute, wait, this one ain't pro-life enough, and this one isn't, pro-constitution enough, and this one doesn't like me enough, and this one doesn't like her enough. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see a bunch of bickering and back and forth fighting. And I've grew up seeing that here in the South. I don't know how this works in other parts of the country, but I can tell you that down south, we have churches. And if I drove you around my part of the world, I could show you churches, and I could say, okay, over here is this church. Now I'm going to drive you down the road a few feet to the church down here. They were once the same church. But one day they began disagreeing over which one wasn't Baptist enough or which one wasn't Pentecostal enough. And so they went over here and changed and started a new church over here. I've seen that my entire life. I don't care to say it. I saw my grandmother's church change pastors so fast. They finally, they kept having to go and repaint over the sign. So finally, they just got one of those that you just screw the nameplate on and bring it off. And the reasons that they would fire ministers would, you guys are going to laugh, but I'm going to tell it because I'm just going to show how ridiculous these people can be. One guy got fired because he sweated too much when he preached. They thought he perspired too much. They also thought that he got a little too worked up and carried away. One guy wore some snakeskin boots, so they didn't like the looks of it. One guy's hair touched his collar. I mean, that would be the kind of things. One guy might have eaten too much meatloaf at the cookout, and they had an issue with that. I mean, and they would literally fire him and go down the road and find somebody else and bring him in. They, oh, you got to hear our new minister. I heard that my whole life growing up. Oh, you need to come back to church, Brando. Hear our new minister. This one's so much better than the last one that we fired last week. And they done that forever. And then when it got so bad, they just went down the road and created a new building. And if you weren't from here, you wouldn't realize that they're really all connected. It's just offshoots of the other one because, guess what? They couldn't get along. And so that's what we're seeing already. Mike Pence could have pointed out so much more about RFK Jr., but he's just worried that he's not going to be pro-life enough. Now, some people say, Brando, this don't matter. J.D. Vance is the VP now. No, Pence don't matter anymore. But no, Pence does appeal. You have to realize Pence does appeal to a good chunk of these evangelical pro-lifers. I've known some myself who have said, well, I don't think Pence was as bad. And I have heard some say, well, I know Donald Trump did all that crazy stuff, but Pence did stand for the Constitution. So that, I mean, the fact that he's calling for this is going to cause a lot of people to question it. And they're going to start to not trust RFK Jr., and RFK Jr. won't be MAGA enough for him. And RFK Jr. will be bold about it. He'll think he can speak out up against Trump, and he'll realize that that don't work. And I really believe you will see MAGA just self-destruct. But folks, I want to thank you again for sticking around with me here on the channel. I truly appreciate all of you who have came back and all of you who have hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't already, be sure to do so. We're on the road now to 500,000, and we'll get there. And I know you guys well enough to know we won't have all the infighting and there won't be offshoots of the Tennessee Brando channel. We'll keep it together. We'll keep it all here under one roof because we're reasonable people and they're not.